Amy Adams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a privilege to rise to speak to the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Bill first reading, although it's one of those times you actually wish you didn't need to be here providing a response to this sort of situation. And Mr Speaker, it's been said before, I know, but 4:35 in the morning on the 4th of September was the beginning of a hellish period in Canterbury, and it's the time when everything started to change. And from my perspective, actually everybody from that date in Canterbury has been working tirelessly and doing everything they can to help get the region back on track. And that, sir, is every political figure, every elected figure of any persuasion, every volunteer, every household, every school, every business, every linesman, every council worker. I haven't seen anybody in Canterbury who isn't doing everything they can to try and get our communities and our region back to being the best region in the country. But for all that, it is like nothing any of us have ever dealt with. And for any of us, and I don't think anyone is taking this position, but for any of us to assume we know exactly how this is to be dealt with is wrong. We are learning as we go. We have to. This is, without doubt, the biggest natural disaster that this country has had to deal with, and the repercussions from it, the loss of life, the impact on the community, the loss of homes, the uncertainty, is going to be with us for a long, long, long time. And we, as a parliament, have to do everything we can to help that process be as manageable and as survivable for everyone in Canterbury. Over the 7 months, sir, we have learnt that this is a huge event and the recovery will take years. We've learnt that you do need to have a single point of coordination and ultimately control. And we've learnt that there would be many, many views as we go through this on what should be done. As we fight our way through this and as we learn how to deal with this, it is inevitable that there's going to be disagreement on each step and how we should get there. We all know what we want to achieve, but we all know that we're not going to agree every step of the way. And I think there will be as many different views on what should happen in Canterbury as there are people in Canterbury. And that's absolutely valid and an important part of it. But equally, sir, we have to have that central hub through which progress can be made. And we've learnt that a process was needed that could help us to move positively, because I think positivity is going to be a key element of this, and decisively. And the heart of all of that is acceptance by everyone. And this is not an easy acceptance to reach, but an acceptance that there is no way a business as usual approach to any of this is going to work. If we think we can simply roll out the tried and tested, normal, business-as-usual approaches to decision-making and government and judicial processes as a review and consultation, the way we would for every other response and the way that we would all agree is appropriate, we will get nowhere, and Canterbury will not get back on its feet in the sort of time frame that it needs to do. We know after the 4th of September that this House passed the Canterbury Earthquake Response and Recovery Act, which did contain significant and wide-reaching powers, but that was an appropriate and necessary response to that time, and as all sensible commentators are now agreeing, has been handled appropriately and necessarily. The 22nd of February just made things considerably worse. But what the earlier period did give us, sir, were those learnings about the sorts of things that we were going to have to get in place quickly for this to work. And I just want to very quickly take the opportunity to quote from Clause 3A and B of the bill, which sets out the primary purposes of this legislation. The purposes of this Act are to provide appropriate measures to ensure that Greater Christchurch and the councils and their communities respond to and recover from the impacts of the Canterbury earthquakes, and to enable community participation and the planning of the recovery of affected communities without impeding a focused, timely and expedited recovery. That, sir, is the framework against which the exercise of any powers under this legislation has to be exercised, and that sets out the key principles against which the exercise of those powers will be judged. This is not actually about setting up a structure and a framework which will be implemented from day one. What it actually does is set up a framework of powers that can be had, we can have access to in regard to if they are needed. I see them, sir, as a backstop to the usual council processes, so that if there can't be collaboration and we can't reach a point from which we can all move forward together, then there is at the end of the day a backstop of ultimate decision making. And I don't see anything constitutionally that says that that's inappropriate, and I don't think there's anyone in my communities that I've spoken with who wouldn't say, look, yes, we do have to have community input, it is fundamentally important, but we must at the end of the day be able to draw a line in the sand and have a final decision maker who will stand up and take the decision. Now, if we don't accept as a community and as a region and as a parliament that we will never get to a place where everybody agrees with the outcome, then we're not going to get anywhere. And I don't realistically hear that around this debate, but I think it's worth getting that on the record. There won't be a time at which we can say, yes, everyone's on, let's now move forward. So yes, we must have participation, but let's make it very, very clear, discussion is not going to be endless. You know, there will be people who leave the discussion and the input feeling that they don't like where it got to, and they will therefore feel ignored. They haven't been ignored, but not everyone is going to get outcomes they want. I bet I'm not going to like a lot of the decisions we reach in this process. There'll be things that I think I might have done differently, and that will be true for every Cantabrian. There has to be a point at which we say, we have heard, we have listened, but now is the time to make a decision. And I think if anybody was to start going around laying out a view and stirring up dissension and concern on the grounds that that means your views are being trampled on, then that, sir, would be playing politics. Telling people that if they don't get the outcome they want, their views have been trampled on, is politicking. And I think it's the sort of thing that Cantabrians will very quickly turn on, because if there's one message coming through to me loud and clear, is that Cantabrians want to see a way forward, they want to see positivity, and they want to see their leaders pulling together. Questioning, yes. Being involved, yes. Disagreeing, yes, of course. But as soon as they start seeing point scoring, I tell you, my view is they will shut down and turn off very, very quickly. They need us to provide the hope, they need us to provide the positivity, they need us to provide the vision, and in this legislative chamber, sir, they need us to provide the framework in which that can happen, and happen in a time frame that's going to allow Canterbury to get back on his feet. For those reasons, I'm very pleased to commend the bill to the House.